Welcome to Let's Run Facebook Ads, the podcast with myself, James Urquhart. And today we are joined by Andrew Heathcote, who is the director of Origins of Motion, who are a videography company that specialize in grabbing attention on social media. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, James. I really appreciate it.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, mate. I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to having a good chat about some paid ads in amongst a busy week. And as a video man, I'm just admiring your backdrop. It's quite impressive.
It's good, isn't it? I've gone from AirPods at home being told the quality shit to in a studio, which is cheap down the road. And it's actually, you were supposed to be here today, but where our office is randomly, it's 4 seconds away at the local rugby club. This guy has just randomly put it here, which I never knew existed until I Googled.
Love it. Very good.
It's absolutely great.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, but yeah, we're going to make the best of it.
Absolutely. Well, look, I really want to get on to really your background and how you got to Origins of Motion.
Yeah, so I started out working in TV. I was a television researcher working on like really trashy programs, which probably not many entrepreneurs and small business owners watch because they're too busy grinding away. But back in the day I did, and I was making Cowboy Builders with Dom Littlewood, like property shows and all sorts of stuff like that, and did a couple of years in that industry, and then just kind of felt like it wasn't, like the industry wasn't for me. I kind of started to make my own films prior to kind of like properly freelancing as a videographer. And I just found like short form content and content for social media was kind of more my thing. Like you've got lots of projects going on at one time. You really can you can get as creative as you want, which I absolutely love. Whereas with TV, it was all formatted. You were stuck to a format all the time. So that's kind of why I came out of the industry. And then I think just do what a lot of us do when we start a small business, an agency where you kind of start doing the work yourself and you just go from there. And we're now a team of 6 creating corporate content. But the reason why we're having this chat, I guess, today is that we do also get involved in paid ads, creating video for paid ads and running campaigns as well, which is a really enjoyable part of our work. I absolutely love it, to be honest, because it's a bit of a game changer. There's nothing that focuses your mind when it comes to brainstorming video content or any content like when you're tasked with generating results. I think as like video creators, you can be very, very lazy, and you can just be quite kind of self-serving in the content that you want to create. I think that happens a lot. So like, you know, we as videographers, as cinematographers, DPs, whatever you want to call yourself, like quite often want to make cinematic content, or you want to make stuff which kind of serves your own show reel and moving you forward in that sense, which is a very different thing to creating content that sells in a funnel or in paid social. So it's really interesting to have both sides, I guess.
How did you get to? So we've spoke a couple of times prior to being on here today, and something I was really intrigued was not many companies from a creative background have gone into the paid aspect of marketing, because it's very different. You know, the people that listen to this know our background, Nick and I's background, which is data. So for us, looking, at Facebook ads and how we created Let's Run Social was all down to, we've got an issue within our current industry. We need to pay our bills. Let's see if this works. And thankfully it did. And for us, it was quite an easy transition. The only bit we struggled with at the start was actually the creative side, because we're not creative guys. We like Excel without sounding too geeky. Whereas actually for you, I would say your transition's probably been a bit harder, because you've gone from creator, cinematography, all that stuff, really cool videos, to now I want to actually put this to the right audiences and demographics using the back end of these social platforms, which are quite demanding.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think we're still in that transition, to be honest. Not that we're looking to transition fully and not just kind of create, say, corporate content, but in terms of being seen as a resource for companies that can can do can run these campaigns probably at a higher level. I think we're still on that journey. And it is a big adjustment. I think what my experience initially was, so the reason I got into this, exactly the same as you, like you're saying, there was a commercial or a financial need basically for you to like, and so you looked at the space. And it was the same thing. Like video companies are they're really tough. It's a really tough business model. You're going project to project all the time. As soon as you start growing a team, it gets really stressful, because I suppose, you know, like a lot of marketing agencies, you're kind of almost back to zero every month, and then you're having to kind of go out and search for that work. And it doesn't matter if your show reel improves, your work gets better, there's that constant thing in the back of your mind, like, this is really, really tough. So that's where it came from for me. It was like that need to find more reliable recurring income for the business. And that's where it started. I actually did a course with a company over in the States. I actually got targeted with some Facebook ads. There we go. And that's how I got into it. And their messaging was really precise. They knew my pain points perfectly, and they well and truly sold me the dream. And but I did that course, and to be fair, it was really good. And it was basically, how do you take a video company and you introduce recurring revenue? And their answer to that was, well, actually, you get involved in the distribution as well, and you can kind of sell that on after you've made the content, or, you know, in the planning phase of the project. That was a number of years ago. That was 3 or 4 years ago, and that kind of gave me a really good I suppose theoretical understanding of how the space works. You know, testing, iteration, you know, differences between platforms, lots of different things. But I kind of didn't really move on it for a period of time, and the reason was that it was a difficult transition. It works in a completely different way to, you know, us pitching for a website video or an internal communications video. It's so different. And so nothing really happened for a few years, and then eventually what happened a couple of years ago was that we created this like sort of creative video campaign, I guess, for a company. We worked really, really hard on the concept, and worked very, very hard to create an asset that we believe was going to sell to their audience. And our intention was to hand that over to a paid social agency for them to run the campaign. Just at the time, I didn't have the contacts. I didn't know the guys who were going to run the campaign. Sort of brought in a few local agencies to kind of interview them, and sort of, because we were really keen for this asset to go really well. And I knew enough to know that they weren't going to do a great job, but kind of at the time not enough to run the campaign myself. So it's just kind of like one of those. The client was like, I can maybe do it, and he was like, go on, give it a crack. And we did it, and it went great, and it just kind of went from there, really.
Something you mentioned there about you interviewed some local agencies and you just didn't think they were capable. Why was that? Was that their knowledge and the things that you've learned from this course and gone, wait there, you're having me on here?
Yeah, like, I don't think they were trying to have me on. I just didn't feel at the time that they had the level of expertise that we needed. Like, they weren't talking to me about, you know, taking the assets and, you know, chunking that down and split testing different ad angles. There just wasn't enough depth there for me, and I felt like there wasn't going to be enough analysis of the data for it to be for the campaign to be as successful as it could be.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting, because something that we learned very early on, I'm going to use the word journey, but when we started Let's Run Social, when we were, I don't know if we were pitching against other agencies, but a lot of the feedback we got were the amount of detail you go into is so valuable. Because like you said there, things like dynamic creative and all the rest of it, you know, from a Facebook ad perspective, you can test very quickly. And I think what's really nice with how you've come into this is that because you've got the creative in-house, if you do see an iteration, you're like, actually, that might work, you can change that. Where when we started, we didn't have internal resource to be able to change creative quickly, which meant we had two options: either go out back to the client and say, can you change it? Or we've then got to charge the client, which sometimes, you know, especially in the early days, we just didn't have the client base that had that amount of revenue to do it. But I guess for you guys, it's really nice, isn't it? Because if you've done a massive video, you know, campaign, and again, you're putting that into chunks, you can chop and change that as many times as you want. And because obviously you want that recurring revenue, you're going to sometimes lose on some jobs from a production perspective, because the longer longevity is to keep them on as a client.
Yeah, definitely. It does work really nicely. I'm sure now that you guys do have that internal resource, you find the same thing. There is a nice flow to it. I think, we do plug into other paid social agencies as well. And conversations that we've had with some of those guys is that, like, they can kind of have the best intention for the content that they're creating, but if they're not collaborating with maybe the right freelancer in terms of videographers or agency or whatever, the content can kind of miss the mark. Like, if you don't have that if you don't have an acute awareness of how paid social works, of how ads in the social space work, you can get the wrong feel for your content. It's a really hard thing to describe because it's subjective, but then there's kind of like a science to it as well.
Yeah,
End up with content. Yeah,
it's really frustrating, isn't it? Because you've probably done some amazing videos. You've gone, this is nailed, absolute nailed. Put it live, it's flopped, and it's bizarre. We've all done it. We've had some content from clients, or we've done some imagery and you put it live and you've gone, not a problem. It looks sort of 48 hours, 72 hours. You're like, oh dear. But it's on point. What we've got, and I use this example a lot. We've got a client that sells guttering, galvanized steel guttering. It's not a sexy product, so it's not a nice consumer facing product. There's two things that really work for them. One is a static carousel of different types of galvanized steel, and also how to clean your guttering video, which is proper low production. And like Andrew, I'm talking proper low production that they've done themselves years ago. I've not seen results like it. On average, they'll do about 100 grand a month profit. It just, if you were to look at these videos and creative, you'd go, not in a month of Sundays yet. We've tested higher res, better quality, and it's not worked as well. And there's some things we've paid that just doesn't work, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. And one of the reasons why I was really keen to get, and something we spoke about very quickly here is, and I want to get more into this, is this testing approach, because a lot of people that listen to this don't have tons of revenue and disposable income to come out to a video company like yourselves, because unfortunately, like agencies, we're expensive and there's no getting around that. We have a cost per head and all the rest of it. Why people listen to this is because we're giving them tips on why and how they can do certain things until they are ready to actually go out and get an agency on board. From a testing perspective with video, what tips and what have you seen? How much testing should they do? Should they do one massive video and chunk it down, or should they do different ones? Can they use their iPhone? All that side.
Yeah, so I think my advice, I guess, would be to keep it as lean as you possibly can when you're testing those ad angles initially, and you're looking for which messages are going to be most effective for the campaigns. I think the worst thing you can do, again, the sort of example that I gave at the start of this call, where I said, we got this opportunity, we worked on this big campaign, and then we ran it on social. We got lucky. It converted, it worked really well, and that gave us the enthusiasm and the passion to kind of move forwards. But it could have flopped. Like, it could have so easily flopped. And we're actually currently, for the same client, working on their 2022 campaign now, and we're taking a different approach because I'm aware that we got lucky. So our approach now is, are there any existing assets that you can work with in terms of video? Has any content been shot in the past that you can utilize? And that's, by the way, with video, one of the massive opportunities, because so many of us just create that content, kind of like stick it on a hard drive somewhere, and we kind of never really get the full value out of it. So I think that's a great place to start. And then on top of that, what content can you be creating yourself? And I'm not talking about diving into Premiere Pro and doing some editing. I'm just talking about, like, if you're collaborating with a freelancer, what content can you shoot on your phone? Like, can you write a script yourself, come up with a message yourself, plan some ad angles that you want to run within your campaign, and create some very simple I suppose, selfie videos. If you're the face of your brand, that works particularly well. I know that won't be the case for everybody, but that's certainly an option. And that's come in because, you know, because we're all so used to watching content on stories and reels, TikTok with vertical video content, well, every platform with vertical video content practically. And so, like, there's a big argument. I don't know what the answer is. You know, you have to test.
Yeah.
But we have this debate all the time. Like, is it better to kind of blend in with a feed and have something which feels really organic, and which probably off kind of shoot stuff yourself on a phone talking to camera, even if that's given to an editor to give it a bit of polish, versus like going whole hog and doing something which has like massive production value to it. I don't know what the best solution is. We find different, like you say, there's no rhyme or reason sometimes. And so the only advice would be start small. And then if you're finding that your, you know, X, Y, Z angles, ad angles are working more effectively, then play with a bit, you know, put a bit more budget into them once you're getting a bit of return on your campaign. I think that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah. I love how you said that, because again, when we started really early on, something that resonated with a lot of our clients back then were actually just use the assets you've got. And they'd sit there and go, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you've got assets available right now. There's probably enough there for us to get some data back to analyze and go, okay, this could work, and going down this route can work opposed to going down the other route later down the line. And it's really nice you said that, because you're right. The amount of companies that go out to tender, they'll want to use an agency, they'll want to use a video company, where they're probably just a little bit too early for it. And we've had to say to a lot of businesses, go away first and come back, because you're just not ready just yet. And some of them have been really kind and gone, I really appreciate you saying that, you know, appreciate the honesty. Some are just shocked and gone, well, no, we need this. But actually you don't. You've got so much content, especially for a lot of e-commerce brands, you know, whether it's shoes, you know, guttering's a bad example, but shoes, or, you know, selling peanuts or pork crackling, you know, you'll have loads of assets. You know, if you've got people packing the pork crackling, or you've got, you know, people, well, there's tons. And again, you know, these phones are just so good, aren't they? You know, I had Luke Evans on from Unique Productions last week, who he reckons 70% of the work, you know, from a small business owner can be used on your iPhone. Now, yeah, the other 30% is going to look great, but actually you can do so much now. And I'm interested actually what you said about, do you go with the platform, which I would call native content, or do you go against the grain? And that's one internally we're having battles with, because I believe it's really hard with this, and you know paid. So let's go into this now. Is I believe since the update, the iOS update, I truly believe Facebook and alike, and obviously we're seeing their share price fall. They want people kept on their platform as best, and we know that anyway. But since the update, we're seeing prices increase massively when we're sending people away from Facebook, regardless if it's got a pixel on there or not. So what we're doing internally at the moment, we're doing a lot of testing, which is lead gen via a landing page, or lead gen via a Facebook form. But in terms of the video, we're also testing the ones that are native, say on TikTok, or the ones that just are against the grain. Now, at the moment, we are seeing a slight increase for the ones that aren't, which I would class native. What are you seeing, and would you recommend? And again, it's very different for brands, and I know that, and I'm not going to hang your hat on it, Andrew, but if someone was coming to you today, would you say keep native, or would you go rogue?
Go rogue. I love that. I think my advice, I think if we were, I suppose, speaking in terms of the same audience, some of the guys who are listening to this now, the small businesses, maybe they haven't got that budget, I would say go native, because I think that's much easier to achieve than going rogue. I think going rogue, or sort of going against the grain, can need more thought, can need more production, not necessarily. But I think, yeah, I think it's more tricky to do, and to do well. And so I would see that as like phase 2 of a campaign. If you're going to do it, I think, like, test those ad angles first, even if, you know, you're not going to, you know, even if the results maybe aren't quite as strong, At least you know what's converting, what's working well in terms of your message. And then if you want to do something which is more creative, do it with the messages that are most powerful, because you still want to kind of pursue the ad angles, in my mind, the ad angles that are resonating most heavily.
Yeah,
that answers your question directly. I don't have an answer particularly in terms of what are we seeing, because I think we see different trends from company to company.
It is, you're right, it is hard, especially with the smaller ones, because a lot of smaller businesses don't want to be seen in a different light, and they don't want to go there against their brand too much because it's still their baby. We work with some big brands who don't really care as long as they get the revenue. Enterprise, one of our largest clients, they're literally just like, do what you want as long as it's within our brand guidelines. I generally don't care, but you've got to get results. Whereas some of the smaller businesses we deal with, and some of the ones that we actually consult for that listen to this, they don't want to go too far against what they started, because they're still in that phase, which is, it's still my baby. Yes, we need results, but I also don't want to go too rogue, because it's then, it's not, this isn't what I created here. I think it's hard, isn't it? Because I'm very much results first, anything else second, whether that's brands, identity, whatever that is. Because in my opinion, you can't create a brand without revenue. And I don't, and you look at Gymshark, who I reference a lot on this, they're so rare, aren't they? You can't always look at these big boys and go, well, they did it. Ben got lucky, good timing, he's done very, very well for himself. But you sometimes you have to go against your own ethos just to be able to get results. And you'll know from paid social, it's so hard, isn't it, sometimes, because you can look very samey, especially when you're retargeting from an e-commerce brand.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like the damage that you can actually do by trying something different and going against what you see as your brand is very minimal as well, because I think content, like, it comes and goes, and I think people have got very short memories, which is, partly why we get paid to do what we do, which is like to appear to them in the feed and to give them something compelling that they're going to click on. That's why that's a profession. That's why it's not easy to do. And I think, I don't think you can really, providing you're not like deeply offending anyone, I don't think you can do too much damage to your brand anyway. I agree. I think like sometimes that's the frustration. Like, we're working on a set of YouTube videos at the moment for a company, and they're getting really hung up on the like minute details. And we're just kind of saying to them, like, it really doesn't matter in the slightest. You've just lost 8 weeks of testing and iteration and learning. Because you wanted this graphic or that graphic to be right. You've shot yourself in the foot, really. So it's an interesting one, but I think it's, it's being in that position, talking about our journey again, and the fact that we can distribute those assets compared to in the past, just delivering content. It puts you in that position to be able to guide the client in that way, to say, look, don't worry about it. Like, don't, get it 80% of the way there. Yes. But it's about implementing as well, kind of thing, because it is all about results. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's so frustrating because, there's some color changes, or can you change that blue to, a couple of, and it doesn't matter. Yes, absolutely. There are some colors that work. We know that, and we know the ones on certain landing pages that work. But actually, at these early stages, just get it live. It's very much like this podcast. When Nick and Matt first started this, a year ago, my remit to them both was, don't spend too much time on it, because I just didn't think it was ever going to amount to anything. Just get it live. Matt wanted it to be, get a studio like we're in today and all the rest of it. I said, absolutely not. No one's going to listen to it for the first year. So just get it live. And they did. They went to Matt's house and just got it live. And, suddenly we're on, the listeners we are today, which is fantastic. But, if we'd have waited to get it perfect, we'd have never got this live in a million years, because there's always something that someone's not going to be happy with. And like I said, it might be a color, it might be, the audio, like I said, it's so fast paced on social now.
Yeah.
You can't wait. You have to just go and just dip your feet in and just go for it. Because like I said, you'll be left behind, and the learnings are so important. we know the seasons change, and if you're selling a product and you've got a video that's done for that particular season, well, 8 weeks, that's pretty much it done. So it's
100%.
it's nuts, isn't it? Budget. You spoke about budget earlier. When testing video, what type of budgets do you guys internally like to use?
Yeah, so we're at a stage where we work with a whole range of business sizes. So with that, we start our campaign management at like £500 a month, and we would recommend an equal budget in terms of ad spend, pretty much across platforms. Having said that, give or take, I'd say, because I think it's about starting with a budget that you feel comfortable with, and that you can kind of, I hate the phrase, afford to lose, but it doesn't freak you out. You're not spending everything that you own on getting those initial tests back, because that's what it is, isn't it? Like, that initial phase is, let's get the information, let's gather the information, and then you want to be able to kick on after that. Like, if you've got that information, but you've kind of stressed yourself to the point of kind of considering whether to go forwards. I think that's a mistake you often see. I think it's particularly in the small business market. I've made the mistake in the past, is like you go into it and you feel very passionate about the process. And this is, by the way, across marketing, not even just paid social. And you stay the course for 2-3 months. You go, okay, we're getting leads, but we're not getting quality leads. And then the whole thing gets turned off. But I don't, paid social is no different to any other form of marketing. You have to test, you have to iterate, you have to figure out the formula to get those high quality leads, converting leads. It depends on the industry, of course, but I think that sometimes, we turn off too quickly, maybe because you start with a budget that's too high, or maybe just because you didn't understand the process to begin with. You just expected that it was going to happen straight away. I don't know what you find, James. Like, how do you find that you have that space to operate from your clients? Or do you feel that you have to kind of generate those results from day one, and if you don't, then that's end of?
When we first started, we were naive, I think is probably the best word to use, because of our data background. It's all, I can look at even just a business today, and they could give all the figures down on a piece of paper, and I can tell them what they can do in 2 years by doing certain things, just because of, I've been doing it for so many bloody years. And it's the same with ads. I can look at a campaign and put in all the figures and go, perfect, this is where you'll be then. And it does work fantastically. Where my naivety came was when people said after day one, where's our sales? Well, come on, don't be soft. It's never going to work. E-commerce is very different than service-based businesses. So we've got some e-commerce businesses that do money from day one. Now, and that's where I think the difference is. When you've got service rather than e-com, you will get some sales straight away, because they're probably doing PPC, they've got some SEO activity from the past, they've probably got a client base, and all that is just, I call it mopping up. You'll be able to mop up some orders in, and to be fair, it's easy. Some of the e-commerce brands from a mop-up perspective. When it goes out, going to those core audiences and creating that brand, and get those addressable markets, that's where you need testing budget. And that's where you need a budget that's going to give you the right volume of data, because we know the CPMs are going up. The CPMs have been going up for the last 2 years. Where I get very frustrated with some people in our market, Andrew, is that people keep going, the cost per click's increasing. The cost per click's not increasing. The CPMs are increasing because our marketing is getting worse. If our marketing is good, your CPMs will lower. I've got some brands who are service-based businesses who should not be getting the CPMs they're getting. The reason we are is because we're getting to the right audience with the right messaging, and it's keeping people engaged on the platform. Our CPMs are some of those as low as £2.50, and that's from a lead gen perspective, not even from a just trying to get the message out there. So from a budget perspective, when we first started, said, you don't need test budget, we'll just get some orders in straight away. I say to everyone now, what is your test budget? And you need to think of this as money that's gone. It's totally gone now. All it's going to do is give us some learnings. If you get some sales from it, it's great and it's fantastic. But reality is you're not. And I think it's going in with that honesty and saying, you're probably not going to get much from this. You might do, and you might do, but it's not as easy as it was. And I think a lot of people that are listening to this have probably gone into Facebook ads, or they've tested themselves, they've tried it, and they've gone, £10 a day budget. and they're worrying, they're looking every hour, what's going on? Well, £10 a day is only going to give you, let's say, 2,000 impressions at £5 CPM, give or take. That's not a lot. If you get 1% click-through rate on the average, you can do the math very quickly. If your landing page conversion rate and all the rest of it, but then you do get some campaigns that absolutely fly. We're doing a hearing aid campaign for 2 shops, and well, one's a shop and one's the head office. They started about a week and a half ago. We're generating them 10 leads a day for over 50s that are selling hearing aids. And they've already said, you carry on, you'll be on £1,000 a day ad spend. They started on, I think, 2,000 a month. So that, even something like that, you can, very quickly, but we've got lucky. The creatives, we've got a bit rogue on that creative. We've got a bit interesting. The video we did was really interesting, actually. So I had an idea of going, right, we'll do a video and there'll be people talking, but there's no sound. Cool. And then the copy will go, if you can't hear this, click the link. You need your hearing aid or whatever. I can't remember what it was exactly.
I love that. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, so just something simple, and again, really low production. That I think we did that for free. It was like a 2-minute job in house. I said, well, there's literally nothing to do. We'll just do that. So you do get some campaigns that fly, but I think everyone has to go in with a testing budget when they first start using ads. And I also think if you are using things like PPC activity or SEO, well, you've got a lot of traffic to your website anyway. I think you split the budget in 2. I think you've got your testing budget, and I think everyone should have an ongoing testing budget to always keep ahead of the curve. And then you have your budget, which is, you pretty much know what you're going to get from it. If it's a 2 ROAS, and I don't like using the term ROAS because it's very quick and instantaneous. ROI is really, that lifetime value for me is where you need to be looking. That's just an always on approach. But I think the testing budget is really important for especially companies like yourselves, because if you're trying to create or go into new markets or actually create your own addressable markets using video, which is what, I'm saying to all my clients at the moment, yes, we can select the demographics on the back end of Facebook, which is great. They're not as good as they were. We know that, again, because the iOS update. What we're doing internally is actually creating our own addressable markets using video content. So if we're trying to get to, let's say, the hearing aid as an example, we know that over 50s struggle with their hearing, or they, just diminishes within time. How can we at over 50 understand if people need a hearing aid? Well, I can't click on the back end of Facebook, they want a hearing aid. Mm-hmm. But we can create content, and the only people that engage with that content, the people that are in a market or might be in market. So what we'll do then is create a custom audiences based on the ones that engage with that content. And then you've got an addressable market for 180 days. And then you hit them with a commercial ask. So whereas, in the pandemic, it was easy, I called it the gravy train. Anybody could set an ad live and get it going. Disposable income, sat at home bored. The Amazon driver was busiest bloke in the world, or girl. It was easy. So I think, I know I'm going off at a bit of tangent now, but I definitely think splitting a budget in 2 for longevity is really important. But not everyone, Andrew, has that capability. So it's really hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's in that answer alone, James, I've learned so much. So thank you for that. I think, like, you were saying about, I suppose, those warm audiences, or those customers who have maybe engaged with a brand through organic content, or in other ways. That's where I think the opportunity is, isn't it, to get those kind of quick sales if they come. But I love that you kind of put it in a way of, like, you need this testing budget and allocate this amount of budget, which I think is really useful for my own understanding of it. Like someone says something sometimes and it just kind of like clarifies what you kind of know, but in a slightly different way.
Because the problem is we're renting land essentially, aren't we? On these platforms, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, we're just renters, and they can take it under our feet from day one. We've had some post iOS, we've had some clients results just dip. Now they've dipped not from a revenue perspective, but what we're able to see. So when I've obviously go into the Google Analytics, we then see the results. The problem is Facebook then can't see them, which then unfortunately kills us because the pixel isn't as informed as it should be. And this is why we've had to go down this addressable market route to go, right, if they were to get rid of every single demographic on that back end, how can we survive? because Facebook will always be there from a marketing perspective. It's going to now, we could go into AI, but I'd be here all week. How can we create our own? And I think that's what I think everyone needs to look at if they're using paid social going into this year. Is video is non-negotiable. And I'm doing a few talks on this year, which is, for me, everyone's got to be doing video content of some sort, even if it's a podcast like this, which you edit up and whatever it may be. But actually, again, creating markets from that content, you're in control of your own destiny. Some of the baby brands we work with prior to the update were flying. I'm talking 12, 13, 15 ROAS. A lot of they were raking it in. The mum market went from something like 2.5 million to 300,000 overnight. We're screwed. Like that's the reality. So yeah, for me, creating those addressable markets is so important, and which is why we've had to bring some work in house. Like you guys. It's because we can't afford for the client to do it themselves, especially the smaller ones, because, like you said, they might not know what they're doing, or it's just being agile, isn't it? We like to have an idea and act on it quickly, whereas like you said earlier about it's taken 8 weeks to get a client just to go live on a YouTube ads. Just get it bloody live. Let's get some data back and learn and move forward.
Yeah, 100%. As part of that approach for you guys to take this addressable market approach, is that been in response to like the iOS 14 updates? And because part of our messaging, which is, I suppose, understandable with where we've come from, is around like the reduced capability to target and retarget, and therefore creativity becomes really important. So despite what I've said earlier about like you said, trying to be agile and trying to learn quickly, my core belief really is that creativity goes a long way, which is what you found with your hearing aids campaign, isn't it? That can come in many different forms, but I think that's kind of almost like a tool to kind of fight back against iOS 14 and what that meant for the paid social space. But I was just interested to kind of hear what you found as well.
I think a lot of companies see something working and put their eggs in one basket from a creative perspective. So if it's a hearing aid company, as an example, they would have one ad out and a few the same ad going to the same audiences. The problem is not every consumer or prospect want the same thing, and they don't. We know that. And again, it goes back to this gravy train analogy, is that it's been really easy. So creating content to bring people into your ecosystem is number one, but actually then sort of the latter stage of that is, why are they going to convert them post that? So yes, they may come in because they want a hearing aid, but actually people that have who will need hearing aids over 50 have different reasons for wanting one. It might be because they can't hear their grandkids. It might be because they can't see a Zoom. It may be because they can't hear the football when they go, to the local football games. It might be that, they can't get on the bus, or they can't. So suddenly you've got 5 or 6 different pieces of content under that initial bit. So they come in, but then we need to segment them again. But this is then where the money gets involved, because that's when it's not cheap. Yeah. So suddenly it's very, very expensive, because you have, and this is why people listen to this. I always stress, unless you go full hog, outsource, do it in-house, because you can do this using Canva, some of the iMovies and those, you can do this. You can have, YouTube now is amazing for learning stuff. It's fantastic. Only go out to an agency until you're willing to give them the reins and say, right, I trust you, crack on. If not, just don't, because it gets expensive. Like I said, you've got copy, creative for those 6 ads under, you've got the ad budget, you've got the testing. So you may want 3 or 4 different iterations just for the football one, 3 or 4 iterations for the grandkids one, and suddenly you've just got this tributary of just content which has cost you a fortune. But actually you've made no money, because when you look at your lifetime value, yes, it's a $4,000 hearing aid, but it's cost you about $3,500 just to convert a sale. But that initial bit may actually then decrease into 3 or 4 audiences, which then you've got no more copy, so suddenly then lifetime value, longer term, it makes money. But the initial setup is a bloody fortune.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't enjoy those conversations, to be honest, where they're like, okay, what are the costs, and you list out what you've just said, and you just feel the, you know, if you're speaking to someone who is, you know, in the small business market or not too far north of that, you just feel them dying a little bit inside with every new cost that you kind of list out. It is really challenging, and so I think when you do, you know, you have to get to a point of feeling confident in whichever, you know, ad angle that you're going to take. Like you've just listed out. Is it because of you like watching the football? Is it because you want to, you know, be able to speak to your grandkids? Like, okay, you're not going to probably run with only one of those, but you might narrow it down from 8 initially to the 2 or 3 that you then want to put budget into. And I think that's the big thing for me, is like using that budget intelligently, not based on our own intelligence, based on what like the results are telling us. And then I think you can kind of, you've got that confidence, you can kind of, if you are working with an agency or if you're coming up with this like internally, you can kind of like, you can justify spending that time, you can justify spending a bit more budget, and you can throw a bit more at it, knowing that, or feeling more confident that you are going to get value out of that content. And it's not just going to, like you said, it's not just going to be a flop, or certainly there's much less chance of that being the case. And by the way, if it is a flop, rework that content. Like, that's entirely possible. You rework it and it may be the best asset that you've ever created. Like, don't just give up on it.
No, you can't. If you know your market has got that problem and that video content is trying to solve that problem, well, it just isn't the right one. The problem's still there. You just need to find a way to put that across in video. And like I said, sometimes it's 4 iterations. It might be done in 1. You've just got to keep testing. From a testing perspective, again, I don't know how you guys do this internally, but initially we were always working off about 2 to 3,000 impressions to be able to see if something's working or not. Now we've increased that. Again, because of the update and the data back, which is 72 hours. How do you know if something's working or not? Do you go based on engagement? Is it clicks? Is it how do you, when you look at a testing campaign, how do you say, right, Mr. Client A, this one's working a treat, this one's pants?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like trying to get as close to the end of the funnel as possible. That's the way that I would understand it. So, you know, if you can base it on sales, base it on sales. But if you can't, like, kind of work your way back down the funnel, I guess. That would kind of be my understanding of it. Yeah, because I think, you know, it's the same as organic content. I guess there are, I don't know, what would you say, James? Are there some metrics, do you think, that would be, you know, like with organic, they say vanity metrics, don't they? I think we've paid it slightly different, because, like you say, you're talking about your CPMs, and the lower your CPMs are, the better it's going to be for how that all tracks through your funnel. But
I think it's I always, when we start testing, we have to wait 72 hours now, realistically, to get the right data back. We have to, because it doesn't feed back in time. So the testing process has now been increased in time, which is frustrating, because we could put an ad live this morning, and by the end of the day, I'd know if it was working or not, which is great. And it was easy, and we could be really flexible then, which was great. Now we can't be, which is a shame. And again, for people listening to this, if you are putting an ad live today, just shut your laptop and go back in a few days' time and just see if it's working or not. Do not get into this, you know, in this habit of, quickly refreshing. Just leave it, because you'll drive yourself crazy. I always look after 3 days what the engagement is on those ads. Really, that's the biggest thing for me, because if people engage with it, you can then see it, obviously follow them through the funnel. But again, unfortunately, you know, like you said earlier, Andrew, it all depends on budget, because if they've only got 20 quid a day or something, what's the goal of that ad? And I think that's the biggest thing that we've learned over the last probably year, I think, is actually going into each ad with a goal. So if it's a top of funnel ad, which is trying to create custom audiences, it's not about sales. It's just about creating engagement. So we know what the addressable market is. So if you're going to spend, say, 40 quid a day for 5 days on that addressable market piece, I want X amount to then fall into the custom audience pot. Then I've got £20 a day following up on that customer custom audience piece with a more commercial ask ad, which is, hey, book a demo or come in for a call or whatever that may be. And then you can, what's the goal for that? Right, I want a click-through rate of 4 to 5% on average. And I want then from those a 20% conversion rate on my landing page. Then we can then look at those results from the client and go, right, what's the quality of that lead? And that's where then the relationship between you, the agency, and the client becomes key. Because if we're not getting feedback on the quality, you know, we can create leads all day, anybody can to some level. But if their quality aren't good and they're not converting, we need that understanding of why. So again, it's always that reverse engineering, isn't it, from all that level. But I think going in with a goal per ad is the most especially, you know, post iOS is the most important tip I'd say for anybody using paid ads. What's the goal? Because if you go in with £20 a day going, I want a sale, well, how, why, what, where? That's not really a goal, because you just picked something from thin air and gone, oh yeah, that'll be all right. Well, it won't, because it's not achievable. What's an actual goal rather than just throwing it at the wall and hope it works? And I think that's where a lot of people get stung with Facebook ads.
Yeah, 100%. It's so interesting hearing you talk about it. It's and I think it's, you know, you're kind of talking about campaigns with at least 2, if not multiple phases, I guess, there, you know, in terms of putting out that initial creative and then retargeting. And I think that's so crucial, isn't it? Like you say, like for every piece of content there needs to be a goal, or every phase of the project at least there needs to be a goal.
Yeah, yeah, there's got to be, because otherwise, like I said, this is why Facebook have made so much money, unfortunately, because people have gone in and they've dipped their toe in, but they've not done it properly. They've seen an ad like you did, you know, for the guys in America. You know, you got sold a dream, and a lot of business owners do, which is great. You've done really well with it. 85 to 90% won't. They'll try it. They'll put the pixel on the website. They'll run a couple of audiences, and it will just flop. And they'll go, oh, Facebook ads are rubbish. They're not rubbish. It's just how you've used the platform. You know, it's the tool. It's, you know, you can have a good bricklayer and a bad bricklayer. They're using the same trowel.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And by the way, like, so I've experienced the difference between, and I'm sure you have, James, running campaigns with my own money versus running campaigns for a client's money. And it's much easier with a client's money just to go, I'm going to review that in X number of days. With your own campaign, it's really hard. So I definitely empathize with anyone who's running their own campaigns and that like want to kind of check in and tweak whilst they're kind of maybe still in the learning phase or whatever it is. It's a tricky one, that.
It is, but I would highly recommend, if you feel that you have to look at that ad because you can't physically leave it, don't run ads. Especially now, because the data just doesn't come back as quick, and that's the problem. You'll look at it and go, well, that didn't work. And like I said, you could get data back instantaneously within an hour. It's great. It's fantastic. You can't do it now. You get some back, but it's not real. And that's where then Google Analytics comes in, and all your tag managers and all the rest of it. And that's where you've got to be, you know, our game's getting harder, Andrew. I wish it wasn't. You know, and you know, we do it day in, day out, whereas, you know, people who listen to this are doing it as well as, you know, running a small business, which you know, like you said, you know, it's hard, and we empathize. But yeah, from a time perspective, you've got to just let it ferment, just let it chill, and go back in a few days. But Andrew, I've actually loved chatting to you today, mate. We've got to cut it off there. But where can people find out about you? Because you also have a podcast, I believe. You've joined the
kicking off. You actually can't find it anywhere at the moment, so I can't tell them where to find it, which is horrible timing. We haven't launched it yet. We've had our literally first recording thing. Yeah. We're not live yet, but we are going to be asking you to come on, James. So there will be, you know, watch that space. But yeah, we're not live with it yet, but it has been a really fun project. I was really reluctant to do it, to be honest, because I just, you know, I've got this real thing about like not jumping on the bandwagon, and it kind of like kills me a little bit when I just feel like I am. But in this case, it's really fun. You know, it's so much easier than creating content, like sitting down to, talk to camera, it's just so much more fun, enjoyable, and the quality of content is so much higher. So if anybody is creating content for organic purposes, for whichever platform, I definitely recommend it, because I've kind of sat on the fence for a long time, started doing it, and actually it's sort of transformed the way we're creating content. Unfortunately, I can't give you a link. I can't give you anywhere to find it yet, but you can find me on LinkedIn, pretty active on LinkedIn.
What's it going to be called?
It's going to be called Attention John Lewis.
Attention John Lewis.
The idea is, the concept of our podcast is that we're going on a journey to win the commission of a lifetime, which would be a John Lewis Christmas ad, which would be no small feat for essentially a local video production company. So that's
And Andrew, this has been a perfect way to end. Should I tell you why? Because everything we've talked about on this pod and is about having a goal for an ad. And you set up a podcast with a goal, and you've even fucking named it. I love it. Absolutely love it.
I love that little summary as well. You've done quite a few of these podcasts. That's what I've just learned in that little summary.
Do you know what? Generally, I haven't. This is all the guys in the office. Like you've been talking for too many years, trying to fucking smooth people over. But Andrew, it's been great to have you on, mate. For people that are listening, have a look on LinkedIn. I know, Andrew, you're quite active on there. And obviously from a video perspective and paid ads, Andrew and his team are fantastic. So find him on there. And then when his podcast is live, it'll be called Attention John Lewis. But Andrew, appreciate you coming on, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks so much, James. Really enjoyed it, mate.
Cheers, mate.